Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. I'm going to keep this silly thing on for another few minutes because we're doing something a little bit differently today. I want to start with some history, some relevant, timely, seasonal history. I've put together a collection of Bill Wilson and Lois and sometimes Bobby's Christmas notices, whether it was sent out in the mail, whether it was in grapevine. These are a couple of Bill Wilson and Lois's Christmas wishes. Andy, if you'll give me the first one that doesn't have a date. I don't have a date for this one. The rest I do. So if anyone recognizes this and knows the date, let me know, please. Andy, I think this is just the first one. This is 12/22/1. Oh, back one. 12/22/1. That's it. If anyone here knows the date of this one, let me know. To everyone, to nearly everyone, Christmas brings thoughts of warm ties to be renewed, gifts to be given and received. Fresh and wondrous is the vision of his will, of his. Well, I can't know what that word is. Of his shines down the centuries to all who look up and behold. To all of us, AA, the Christmas experience is sure to be doubly meaningful. We know ties more precious than any we had dreamed. We have received the gift of life itself and may freely pass that on. Each of us has seen and felt a redeeming radiance which he knows to be the grace of God. What more could we ask? What more could we receive? Yes, it's Merry Christmas, a Merry Christmas indeed. The trustees, the grapeviners, Dr. Bob, Ann, Bobby, Lois, and I wish you the happiest of New Year's as ever, Bill. I love that. Andy, let's go to, I think, 1941, which is number 2. Here we go. It's the season of holiday festivities. We in AA are grateful for having found a solution to our difficulties, which not only enables us to stay happily sober, but helps us to understand and enjoy life as we never have before. A way which gives us courage to face life as it is and not as we would like it to be. A say which strengthens us to keep our balance in the midst of world chaos. Yes, we have much to be thankful for, no matter what our present problems may be, and we find joy in the knowledge that we may bring happiness to friends and families who once there was descolation, that as Americans we can now play the part expected of us. AA Christmas and New Year parties have been reported by almost every AA group in the country, whether large or small. Not only are each such parties a source of grand fun for every member, they are often lifesavers to new members who have not had the time to fully adjust themselves to this new way of life. Many groups here written requesting that we extend our greetings to all others. So to every such AA party, we extend the best wishes of every other AA group. Your central office still continues to handle an average of 125 inquiries a week, besides maintaining or running correspondence with most of the 169 AA groups. Bear in mind, this is 1941. 1941. The book is only, 2 years old? 1941. So go to the last paragraph. You will note that a small beginning has been made in Montreal as well as in Vancouver, Canada. Also, through Spanish interrogators, we've been in touch with a man in Mexico ever since the SEP article, and within the last month, one of the Los Angeles members was able to visit our Mexican friend, with the consequent report of good possibilities for a group there in the not so distant future. It will be much appreciated if all group secretaries advise their general office of the number of AA members in their local groups. Since for the purpose of this bulletin, we are so obliged to estimate the membership of some of the groups, the figures given through though conservative are approximate. Nevertheless, the total of 5,500 members thus compiled will be of interest to doctors, ministers, and friends, as well as to ourselves. Please advise of any corrections. Doc Smith and Bill Wilson send you their Christmas greetings and wish to express their profound gratitude for the truly great work you're still doing. A thought for the new year. God helps those who have suffered enough to see they cannot help themselves. The goodwill of Christmas is in the air. May we of AA reflect that spirit daily through the coming year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you all. Ruth Hock, Secretary. Next one's from and bear in mind, he's talking about 1941. We now have we're supposedly have 2.1 million members. So things have changed since then. Here's 1944 on their 10th Christmas. This is greetings on our 10th Christmas, 1944. All right, we can read that one. Yes, it's in the air. The spirit of Christmas once more warms this poor, distraught world. Over the whole globe, millions are looking forward to that one day when strife can be forgotten, when it will be remembered that all human beings, even to the least, are loved by God, when men will hope for the coming of the Prince of Peace as they never hoped before. But there's another world which is not poor, neither it is distraught. It is the world of Alcoholics Anonymous, where thousands dwell happily and secure. Secure because each of us, in his own way, knows a power greater, who is love, who is just, and can be trusted. Nor can men and women of AA ever forget that only through suffering did they find enough humility to enter the portals of the new world. How privileged we are to understand so well the divine paradox that rises from the weakness, that rises from weakness, that humiliation goes before resurrection, that pain is not only adversity, we have found prosperity where there was poverty, peace and joy have sprung out in the very midst of chaos. Great indeed are blessings. And so Merry Christmas to you all from the trustees, from Bobby, from Lois and me. That's Bill Wilson in 1944. We're going to jump ahead a little bit to the bottom one, which is 1957. Dear friends, as we stand together looking back on 1957, we see among us a heartening growth in numbers and in spirit. Our global unity is something for wonder. The world around us is everywhere our friend. That we of AA can really have and hold such blessings in this time of great fear and conflict, at this time when all men and women stand at history's most fateful crossroads, is almost beyond belief. Nevertheless, we do have these blessings. The sum of them is God's gift to us at this Christmas time. Therefore, let us be worthy, come what may, to hold, to use, and to carry our gift to all who suffer and who may want our aid in the days to come. In the full measure of our abilities, let us follow in the footsteps of him who is called the Prince of Peace. Lois joins me in a very Merry Christmas to everyone. Andy, let's go up to 1950. This is number 5. Let's skip that one. This is running a lot longer than I thought it would. The next one. Christmas 1950, I believe it's number 5. 12/22/5. Okay. This is from 1950, from Dr. Bob and Bill. Dr. Bob passed away in 51. This is the 15th Christmas for Alcoholics Anonymous. Seldom has this tired world been more confused, divided, and distraught. Yet never has the Society of Alcoholics Anonymous been more alive, united, and peaceable. God continues to bestow upon us his long benighted ones abiding joy and boundless freedom. What great gifts of grace. Do we listen? We can hear him say, freely you have received, freely give. Merry Christmas to you all. We of AA shall take these words to heart as never before, for we, more than most, are privileged to know their full meaning. And the rest of them are in your emails. I'm not going to read through all of them. Let me go to the last one I have, which would be, Andy, that number 1957, which is number 9. You had it up a moment ago and I asked you to take it down. I'm sorry. There it is. Christmas greeting for 1957. As we stand together, looking back on 57, we see among us a heartening. Oh, wait a minute. I read this one. I'm sorry. All right, let's finish that. Just go to the last one, Andy, just for sentimental purposes. Number 10. It's the only one I have from Bob. A Merry Christmas and all good wishes for a Happy New Year, Ann and Bob Smith. It's the only one I have. And look at the difference between Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. Bill writes paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and Dr. Bob is just, Merry Christmas. How great is that? All righty. Let me get rid of this so I could breathe. It's real hot in here. You don't mind. Last week, if you get your book out, let's turn to the spiritual appendix at the back of the book. Spiritual appendix is appendix number 2. The page number gets a little dicey here. If you have the 4th edition, I believe it's on page 5, 6, 7. How great is that? 5, 6, 7. In the first and third edition, it's 5, 6, 9. And you have the study version. Here's where it gets fun. The study version, you got to go to page 181 and then turn the page and it becomes 569. This is what happens when you let alcoholics number pages. You go from 181 to 569. In any case, we did read the spiritual experience last week, and we talked about the fact that the only difference between spiritual experience and spiritual awakening is time. One happens suddenly. It's that white light, burning bush moment that Bill Wilson had, that Fitz Mayo had. Most of us have a spiritual awakening, which happens gradually over a period of time, of the educational variety. And what it does is, if we follow their successful direction, we change from being self-centered, selfish, discontented, restless, irritable, discontented human beings to people who have a certain degree of peace of mind and serenity and a willingness to help others. That's the change that the spiritual awakening, spiritual experience brings with it. And in reading these 2 pages, not even 2 pages, 1.5, we have noted, I believe, 18 references to change, saying it different ways, transformation, revolution, and all different ways. It still comes down to Bill trying to tell us that the key here is change. Change, 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 change. I said 18. I'm sorry. I meant 14. 14 references. Didn't want to throw too many people into a tailspin. But I wanted to start today where we finished last week. We had just read the last part of the spiritual experience where Bill gives us a quote from Herbert Spencer. And that quote, let me read again. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot help to fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Now, for what it's worth, just taking it as content, what that says, I remember a song from years ago that contained the following lyrics that says the same thing as that quote does. It was written by John Lennon, and it's from Strawberry Fields Forever. And he says, living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see. Ignorance. Ignorance. Bill gives credit to this quote to Herbert Spencer. Andy, let's start with, I guess it's number one, the SE1, the contempt without investigation quote, and the picture. SE1, I think it is. And then we're going to just go in order. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. The principle is contempt prior to investigation. That is, credit is given to Herbert Spencer for that, when in fact it was written by somebody else. It was written in the original rough version was written by this gent. If you go to the next page, Andy. This gent on the left, William Paley. There we go. William Paley wrote this in he died in 1805. So that'll give you an idea of when it might have been written. But in 1794, it was modified to something resembling the current quote by William Poole. I'll read this in a moment. Let's go to the next one, if you would. No, the next one. Sorry. Picture of Mr. Poole. There we go. This is the man who converted William Paley's quote into what we now know today, roughly what we know today. Let's go back 2 windows, Andy. Okay. The attribution of the quote to Spencer is an error. It should be attributed to an English clergyman, author, and college lecturer by the name of William Paley, who lived from 1743 to 1805. William Spencer, who lived from 1820 to 1903, was a great rival of his fellow Englishman Charles Darwin, who's credited with the theory of evolution. However, it was Spencer, not Darwin, who popularized the term evolution and coined the term survival of the fittest. Bet you didn't know that it was Spencer who popularized those expressions. But Spencer did not author the quotation attributed to him in the big book. You could take that down, Andy. So how did it get attributed? How did that happen? Well, the first appearance of that quote was in the story, An Artist's Conception, in the first edition by Ray Campbell is his name. He designed the red and green circus cover that we know from the first edition. This is designed by Ray Campbell. He also designed the Pathway to a Cure cover. I should have been better prepared for this. I apologize. This is a cover that was never used. It says, Alcoholics Anonymous, their pathway to a cure. It wasn't used because Bill thought it wasn't bold enough. It didn't jump out enough the way the other cover did. And it had the word cure. And we're not talking about a cure. We're not offering a cure. We're talking about recovery, not a cure. Recovery means the symptoms of our disease are no longer present, and cure means the disease itself is not present, and that'll never happen for us. So in Ray Campbell's story, An Artist's Conception, he put that quote at the beginning of his story. When Ray Campbell's story was removed from the book, Bill took that quote out. And when the spiritual appendix was added as the spiritual appendix, it was originally just appendix number 2. When it was added, Bill put that in and carried with it that false attribution to Spencer. So it was a combination of errors that did that. Yes, Gary, thank you. He gave us the page number for an artist's concept. I lost my place. So that's great. I totally blanked out.
An
Totally
artist
blanked out.
concept, you're saying that Gary
Yeah.
gave us the page number?
Yeah, thank you. That kind of threw me. I don't know why. But in any case, that's the history of this quote. It went from the story that Ray Campbell wrote, and Bill took it and put it here, attributed it incorrectly. And personally, I think maybe the reason why it doesn't get changed is because in, was it 1976 at the World Convention where the decision was made, I'll give you the date in a moment, that anything, basically anything in the first 164 pages cannot be changed without agreement. In 1976, I was right the first time, that any change in these steps, traditions, concepts, basically the recovery portion of our book, requires approval by 75% of worldwide groups. 75% of each group has to approve it, and 75% of worldwide groups have to approve it. Now, if you've gone to a business meeting at your local home group, try and get everybody to agree on the type of creamer to use. They're going to want half and half. They're going to want powdered. No, this guy wants milk. That one wants skim milk. You can't get 75% to agree to anything. And I think that's perhaps why it remains. And Gary, if you've got some other thoughts, let me know. Anyone has any other thoughts? But that's just the way I'm looking at it, that it's considered part of the recovery portion of the book. Therefore, it's untouchable. All right. Where we are in the book is we are on page 25. I'm going to read to you what I called last week the AA brochure. You know, when you go on vacation and you want to know what to see at this place and what that place offers, you get a brochure for it. Well, here's the brochure for AA, and it begins on page 25, the first full paragraph that states there is a solution. If you go to the end of that paragraph, 3 lines up from the end, begins the brochure. And it continues all the way through to the end of the next paragraph. So let me read it to you. This is the AA brochure.
Before you go ahead, do you have 14 ways to change, or do you want to speak about that at another time, or what is that in reference to?
14 ways to change. What is that in reference to? I'm drawing a
We're
blank.
just having a question about that. What are the 14 ways to change?
Gary, you have any ideas on that?
No, but you mentioned 14 methods of change in the spiritual appendix, so I thought.
That's what they're, okay, I apologize. I totally misunderstood. In the spiritual experience appendix, there are 14 references to change. And if you like, I'll take a minute and go through them. Let's go back to spiritual experience. I apologize. That's what that must be in reference to. I'm going to read it very fast, and I'm going to give you the numbers as we go along. The term spiritual experience, number 1, circle that. That means change. And spiritual awakening, circle that means change, are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change, there's number 3, change, sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism, has manifested itself among us in many forms. Yet it's true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes, number 4, or religious experience must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Upheaval is 5. If an upheaval changes something, Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary means change. That's number 6. Revolutionary changes, the word changes is 7. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nonetheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming, number 8, overwhelm. When you overwhelm something, you change it. God consciousness followed at once by a vast change, number 9, change. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, transform something is to change it, number 10, though frequent are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference. If something is different, it has changed. That's number 11. Long before he is himself, he finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration. To alter something is to change it. That's number 12. In his reaction to life, that such a change, number 13, could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find they have tapped an unprecedented inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. There's the next one. What is
14.
that? That's number 14. Yep, there's number 14. So there's your 14 references to change. If you find any more, let me know. And I only ran through it quickly because we went through it slowly last week. I just wanted to get that question answered. Okay, there's your 14 references to change. I realized before the meeting, it occurred to me, I've been doing this on Sunday night for maybe 13 years, and it never occurred to me to make a handout of that. So I'm going to do that for the next cycle. I'm going to put this in a PDF and I'm going to highlight the references to change, and we'll show you how there are 14 of them. When I have it made up, I'll throw it in the email and send it out. And if I'm real good, I'll get it done this week and have it in next week's email. In any case, we're back to the AA brochure on page 25, which begins at the end of the paragraph that says there is a solution. The paragraph begins with there is a solution, and 3 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph is where the brochure starts. And this is the AA brochure. We found much of heaven and have been rocketed into a 4th dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life. Incidentally, revolutionize, another way of saying change, toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Or you can read it, has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Either way, it works. He has commenced to accomplish these things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. And whether I pointed it out last week or not, I'm going to do that again here because it's an important statement. Bill mentions a 4th dimension of existence a few times. Let me get this out of here. You don't need this in front of me. And get rid of that. There we go. And I'll remove that. And now I can see you. Okay. I was looking at myself, and that's scary enough as it is. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's even better. Okay. it contains, what we just read, contains a definition of that term, fourth dimension of existence. There are three basic dimensions, and I know there's somebody going around in a lot of meetings talking about there being two dimensions, and I don't know, I can read, and I see three mentioned over and over in this book. The spiritual dimension, the mental dimension, the physical dimension. The spiritual dimension is God. The mental dimension is ourselves, the way we see and view the world. And the physical dimension is the world and everyone in it and how we interact with those three. And so if I am in harmony spiritually, as a result of working the first three steps, I'm in harmony in one dimension. If I then work step 4, 5, 6, and 7, I get right. I get in harmony mentally. If I work step 8 and 9, I get right. I get straight. I get in harmony with you, with mankind, with the physical dimension. So as a result of working those first 9 steps, I am perhaps for the first time in my life healthy. I am in harmony spiritually, mentally, and physically. That is the world in which I walk. I have entered the world of the spirit, is what Bill uses later when he talks about this. But this is the first time he actually defines it. And if you're not sure how he does that, because it is a little vague, let me go over it again. At the beginning of the brochure, he says we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension. So there's the introduction of the term. In the next paragraph, he says, we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have changed our whole underlying attitude towards life, and above it, write the word mental. It has changed. It has altered the mental dimension. Toward our fellows, please underline toward our fellows, and above it, write physical. And towards God's universe. Let's underline God's universe and write spiritual above it. So he's saying that we've entered this fourth dimension that is made up as a result of these deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have put us in harmony with life, mental dimension, our fellows, physical dimension, and God's universe, physical dimension. Spiritual dimension. There's your definition of the fourth dimension of existence. And he ends this paragraph by saying he has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. This is not a self-help program. And if you needed anything here to make that clear, how about using that statement? We could never do it by ourselves means it is not a self-help program. It is a God-help program. If you are seriously alcoholic, as we were, we believe, and please highlight this, there is no middle-of-the-road solution. No middle-of-the-road solution. What are examples of middle-of-the-road solutions? Don't drink and go to meetings. Work only certain steps. Not having a sponsor. Having 2 or 3 sponsors. Right? Working the steps the way you want to work it and not the way your sponsor tells you to. We can go on and on with all the mistakes that are made, but that's what we're talking about, these middle-of-the-road solutions. And you know what happens when you walk down the center of a busy road, a 2-way road? Sooner or later, you're going to get clipped by somebody coming in one direction or the other. It doesn't end well. So let's not go with the middle-of-the-road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, underline impossible if you would, and above it write the word unmanageable. Life was becoming unmanageable, and if we passed into the region from which there is, please underline, no return through human aid, fellowship, is human aid. So if there's no solution, no return through human aid, then fellowship alone is insufficient. Fellowship alone doesn't mean fellowship is insufficient. Fellowship alone. Bill told us on page 17 that fellowship, the common peril, having shared a common peril, is only one element of the cement which binds us together. The spiritual experience as a result of the steps is the other part of the chemical that binds us together. Back in the old days, they didn't have crazy glue or monster glue. They had epoxy, which was made up of two chemicals. It was in a kind of a plastic syringe, and you would push it out, and the chemicals would blend, and then you mix up the chemicals, and that's the bonding agent. One of those chemicals without the other does nothing. Both of them together will keep bonded whatever it is you want to glue together. And Bill's saying that these two elements are the cement which bind us together, that one without the other is insufficient. So he says, through human aid, we had but two alternatives. And please, if you would highlight the rest of the paragraph, even through to the end of it on the next page. And once again, just general highlighting here is we use yellow for what it's worth. You can use whatever you want, obviously. I'm sure someone will put up the key in the chat as to what other colors we use, but pink serves for promises and prayers. Yellow is for general things. What else we got? We have recovered references in blue and recovered
This is
and
orange, approached is blue.
approached. So approached is blue, thank you. And recovered is orange.
What is musts?
Musts are green. I'm sorry, I left that out entirely.
No, you're
Musts
good.
are in green. I totally confused everyone now, I realize. Green is for must, okay? Orange is for approached. Blue, I'm sorry, is for recovered. Blue is for approached. I got a better idea. How about we put it in the chat and I stopped confusing
Yeah, or we could
everybody.
just use yellow and pink.
Okay, in any case, this is highlighted in a general color, and if you're
I
using
think
yellow,
it's remarkable how you have colors for every,
I do.
yes.
I have variations of all colors. Talk about excessive.
So like what shade of orange would the recovered be? Would it be like a light orange or
We're
a
gonna
dark
waste so
orange?
much time on this. Okay, let's get back to the book. Let's not turn this into the lunatic asylum again. That's on Friday at 8 p.m. The Lunacy Commission. One was to go on to the bitter end. And what is the bitter end? It's not a jazz club in Manhattan. The bitter end is jails, institutions, and death. That's what that path leads to. If we don't accept the spiritual solution, we're going down that road. That road to the bitter end, jails, institutions, and death. Blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And how do we, when he says one was going to bitter end, blotting out the consciousness, how do we go on blotting out these things? By continuously drinking. We blot it out over and over again, and we remain powerless. Blotting out the intolerable situation as best we could. And the other, please underline to accept spiritual help. So here are our options. One, go on to the bitter end. So I've underlined go on to the bitter end, as I mentioned before. That's behind door number one. And door number two is accept spiritual help. There is no door number three. Monty Hall and Let's Make a Deal is some other show. We only have two. Go on to the bitter end, remaining powerless. We'll go through that door, that other door, and accept the power.
But if
that
you
can
think
solve
about
our
it, there's
problems.
not really two. It's either you're gonna go on to the bitter end or the choice is spiritual help.
Yeah.
There's not a third, like
That's right.
there's not recovery
That's it.
rehab.
And the other to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to, please underline honestly wanted to, and not or, and were willing, and please underline that word willing, to make the effort. Many want, but few are willing to do the things that we don't like doing, but we do because of the necessity to change. Kathy has to, as a commitment, she's got to cut out for the moment. Let me go back to the end of the previous page and just point something out. We're given an option. Go on to the bitter end, jails, institutions, and death, or accept spiritual help. Now, normal people, you give them that kind of choice that I don't care if it's eating Twinkies. If eating Twinkies is going to kill you, or accept spiritual help, there's no hesitation. Twinkies are out of the picture. It's only the alcoholic who is told you can either continue drinking till the bitter end or accept spiritual help. And it's only the alcoholic who says, can I get back to you tomorrow? I need to think about that. What exactly did you mean by dead? What exactly do you mean by death? Only the alcoholic has to think about those things. Unbelievable. Okay, back to the previous page. It says, because they honestly wanted to, and we've underlined honestly wanted to, and were willing and underlined willing. Ask yourself that question. If you've got the study version on the blank page opposite it, let's write that question. Ask yourself, are you willing to accept help? Are you willing to make the effort? And here's the key question. How free do you want to be? It all comes down to that. Ask yourself if you honestly want to, and are you willing to make the effort? And if you need a little push, there's a third question. How free do you want to be? That's what it comes down to. And like I said before, so very many want, but few are willing to do the things we don't like to do. There are people in this room right now who are on that edge. And I beg of you, come with us. Come with us into the light. Get a book, get a sponsor to go through this book and change. Change. Come into the light. Come into the light. That fourth dimension of existence. Yep, Linda, you got it. That fourth dimension. All righty. This is weird. I usually don't like to start this particular part of the chapter when we still have time left, but we'll get deeper into it next week. We're going to start talking about a gentleman who we were introduced to in the previous chapter. In Bill's story, we're told that Ebby Thatcher was rescued from being sentenced to the lunatic asylum in Brattleboro, Vermont, by two men. Two men appeared in court. Now, actually, there are three men, but only two of them appeared at any given time. The two men were Zebra Graves and Roland Hazard. This is Roland Hazard's story. Rowland Hazard, Hazard. Roland Hazard was a member of perhaps the richest family in the country at that time. His family owned everything. Some of the companies that they owned became Dow Chemical, became Allied Chemical. So many other chemicals, so many other companies were taken from the Hazard family over time, broken down into other forms. Roland Hazard, as we're about to see, was an alcoholic. But let's save some of the details of Roland for a moment. The point being, he's one of the members of the richest families in the country, and he's an alcoholic. Bill says a certain American businessman, Roland Hazard, you may want to write that over it, businessman, because that's who we're talking about. Good old Roland Hazard had ability, good sense, and high character. Again, talk about his family. His family held political jobs. His family was very, very popular in a lot of different parts of the world. For years, he floundered from one sanitarium to another. He consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then he'd gone to Europe. This is about 1930, 33, somewhere in that vicinity is what we're talking about here, according to the book. According to the book. According to the story. Then he'd gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist, Dr. Carl Jung. Now, in some other versions, some earlier versions of this book, what we just read said he confined himself for a year in an institution there, at the same time being under the care of this celebrated physician. Thank God that was taken out, because among other reasons, we know he didn't spend a year there. And I don't want to get too deep into busting up the myth here. Let's go with the story that's in the book. Like they said in the movie, the story of the man who shot Liberty Valance. When the legend becomes fact, we go with the legend. We print the legend, and that's what we're going to go with. This is the story according to the book, but we'll also get into some of the facts. But it says here that he was treated by Dr. Jung. How long? Doesn't say. People, Joe and Charlie, have a tendency to have had said 2 years. I wish Patrick O'Donnell was here. He usually makes a presentation on Roland for us. I'll have to get him maybe next week. But Patrick did some research and found that the Hazards only visited Switzerland for one visit. He went there with his entire family. Roland took his family and was only there 3 days. So he probably could not have spent a year in treatment with him. There's a lot of other stories about Roland and how he got to Dr. Jung, but I don't want to get into them now. Let's go with what's in the book, and then we'll talk about the myths. So he went there and was treated by this Dr. Jung, Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychiatrists of his time. Though experience had made him skeptical. Skeptical just means disbelieving, questioning, doubtful. So Roland is going in doubting that this is going to work. Remember, he's seen some of the greatest psychiatrists in the United States. He's still looking for a solution to his alcohol problem. So he goes to see one of the top psychiatrists in the world, but he doesn't hold out a great amount of hope, right? He finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, and please highlight this, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Self-knowledge. He figured, I now know why I reach and open a door with my left hand, why I scratch my back with my right hand. He knows all the inner workings of his mind. He knows what the triggers, I can't stand that word, the triggers are, okay? So he thanks Dr. Jung, checks out, gets on the train, heads back to England to his family. He doesn't make it halfway and he's dead drunk. Stone cold dead drunk. Somehow he winds up on a train back to Dr. Jung. God knows he probably just slept through the whole thing. He nodded out on the train, came to England. Nobody picked him up. He didn't get off. They went right back to Switzerland. Probably tapped him on the shoulder. Buddy, you can't sleep here any longer. And I'm going to go see my friend, Dr. Jung. So, nevertheless, again, he has self-knowledge. Let's see how self-knowledge worked for him. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time, a really short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to the doctor whom he admired and asked him point blank, please underline why he could not recover. Someone's asking me for the 14 ways of change again. If you didn't get it when we went through it last time, just send me an email and I'll be glad to go over it with you. I'm going to make up a handout for that. But I don't want to take
I
the group.
think they also asked about the fourth dimension.
What is the fourth dimension? I'm sorry, what is the question? Can we hold it to the end? Yeah, Maureen, hold on to that question. I'm going to go over it at the end, okay? We have a section for questions. We'll be there soon, incidentally. So he returned to the doctor and asked why he could not recover. And please highlight the rest of this paragraph. He wished above all things to regain self-control. And above self-control, I've written willpower. He doesn't get it because the doctor doesn't know it. He doesn't have the answer to what is an alcoholic. He doesn't know about the allergy. He doesn't know about the obsession. He knows about the spiritual malady because of what he's about to say to Roland. He knows about the spiritual malady and the solution being in the spiritual, but he can't tell him what it is to be an alcoholic. Let's take a look, Andy, at AA, number 1, AA history diagram. Two things were happening around the same time. The top part of the diagram is what we're talking about now. Dr. Carl Jung in Switzerland in the early 30s imparts to Roland Hazard, and there's a picture of that handsome, dashing man, Roland Hazard. The chap on the left with the pipe in his hand is Dr. Jung. Dr. Jung gives, as you're about to see, the solution. He tells Roland Hazard that your solution lies in a spiritual experience. I can't tell you how to find it. I can only tell you that it has been successful and effective over the years. So Roland Hazard winds up going on a mission. He gets involved with the Oxford groups of the time, and there's a picture of Frank Bookman, who is the head of the Oxford groups. Thank you, Andy, for doing that. And the Oxford groups helps Roland get sober. The Oxford groups have a spiritual plan of action to achieve absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, absolute love, honesty, love, unselfishness, and honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. And he sobered up as a result of those things. And Roland Hazard, as we know, ran into Ebby Thatcher in August of 1934. Now, at the same time Dr. Jung was treating Roland Hazard, if we go to the bottom part of the illustration, we have Silky on the left with his little tufts of white hair. Dr. Silkworth, around the same time, is imparting to Bill Wilson the problem. He tells him about the allergy and the obsession and the spiritual malady. He gives the definition to Bill Wilson, but Bill Wilson doesn't have the solution yet. So he winds up drinking again until he runs into his friend Abby Thatcher, who has the solution and he wants to give it to Bill. And he does give it to Bill. And so for the first time in the history of mankind, the solution and the problem of alcoholics and of alcoholism is together in one person's mind. One person, Bill Wilson. Saint on earth, as far as I'm concerned. Any one of these things I'm explaining to you, Bill called the chain of cosmic coincidences. Any one thing didn't happen the way it did, we wouldn't be here today. If Roland Hazard wasn't in that courtroom that day, he wouldn't have rescued Ebby. We wouldn't have been here today. If Roland Hazard didn't wind up with Dr. Jung instead of some other doctors, we wouldn't be here today. There are so many places to point out in this overall picture where this could have gone south and we wouldn't be here today. But as I said, Ebby Thatcher came to Bill, gave him the solution, and in May 1935, the problem and the solution in the head of Bill Wilson ran smack into a gentleman by the name of Dr. Robert Smith in Akron, Ohio, and poof, the wholesale miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous was born. That delicate chain that could have fallen apart at so many points didn't. And it gave birth to Bill Wilson running into Dr. Robert Smith in Akron, Ohio in May of 1935. And we're here because of it. All right, Andy, you could take that down. Anyone, if I didn't already send that out, if anyone wants copies, just ask me. But let's get a little further on page 26. Says he had no control. We've underlined where he says he wished above all things to regain self-control. So he doesn't understand the problem. He thinks it's a matter of self-will, willpower. Sorry about that. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. Can anyone identify with that? Next to it, I've written, see page 21:1. Next to where it says, he seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. See page 21:1. And if we go to page 21, paragraph 1, lo and behold, what do we find? It says, he may start off as a moderate drinker, he may or may not be continue as hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. And if we take it down, real reference point here at the bottom of the page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom is the real reference that I'm trying to make, because it says in all other regards, he's pretty good, but in that one area, not so much. He had no control over it whatsoever. He was quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. If we look at page 21, bottom, about 7 or 8 lines up from the top, he often possesses special abilities. If you were here when we went through this, you'll have it highlighted. He often possesses special abilities, skills, aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build a bright future for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. Good old Roland, just like us, the real alcoholic. So getting back to page 26, he seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had, please underline, no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? And we just answered it. We just answered it on page 21. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. Please highlight this phrase. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. Remember the formula in the doctor's opinion? for recovery begins with being hopeless. Hopeless. Then we detoxify, then we're given the solution, and we apply the solution, and we change. But the first part is here. He was utterly hopeless. He could never again regain his position in society, and he would have to lock himself up under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. And this next paragraph, only 5 lines long, is entirely highlighted in pink. It is a promise. But this man still lives, at least when the book was written, and he is a free man, underline free. He's not in bondage anymore. He's a free man. He did not need to hire a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster. And please underline the condition, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Maintain a certain simple attitude. The spiritual principles of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Or as Bill calls it, willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. Simple attitude. And incidentally, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude, that is a daily maintenance. Daily. Let's highlight the whole next paragraph, and I'm going to suggest you underline the first sentence. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. For what it's worth, I've circled the word think because most alcoholics readers don't think at all. That's not our strong suit. Some alcoholics may think, take that out. We don't think at all. We kind of drift and bounce, but we don't do much thinking. You know, I have that presentation I give about that ain't in the big book. And one of the things that comes up all the time is you hear in meetings, people say, think, 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 or the sign is turned upside down. Or they say, bring the body and the mind will follow. The last thing in the world I need showing up at any time in any situation is the predator. So my body may show up. I don't want the mind to follow. I want the mind to stay wherever the hell it is. So it doesn't get me in trouble anymore because the mind is the predator. And that nonsense of think, think, think. No, no, no. Get rid of that. All right, off the soapbox. Let's just finish up here. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. We're going to tell you the rest of the story. Who was the newscaster that used to do that?
Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey. There it is. Paul Harvey had a newscast, and at the end of it, he always said the same thing. Okay, so the rest of the story. Let us tell you the rest of the story. He'd throw out some bait and tell you about something, and then he would say, let's tell you the rest of the story. Paul Harvey. He always sat there with his hat and glasses, right? I think he always wore his hat like Walter Winchell. Boy, I'm really showing my age now. Walter Winchell, Paul Harvey. Whew. Wow. Did I tell you when I met Abraham Lincoln? Okay, in any case, let us tell you the rest of the conversation our doctor had with the conversation our friend had with the doctor. The doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. Let's underline mind and chronic. I've never seen one single case recover where that state of mind, underline mind, existed to the extent that it does in you. And please highlight, our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed with the clang on him with the clang. He said to the doctor, is there no exception? And please underline that, is there no exception? And we're gonna stop in a moment, but I wanted to at least introduce this next paragraph. Yes, replied the doctor, there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. That's where we're gonna stop.